record on this computer. I'm going to kill my video and my audio, and Mr. Larimer, you are in charge, sir. Take it away.
All right, thank you. One of the topics that it has come up more than usual has become filter and filter maintenance, breathing equipment and breathing equipment maintenance. With filters, there's some significant differences in some filters that are out there. The one that SATA has chosen to use for a number of years are either what you see in front of me is our 200 series 3-stage inline filter, or up here on this cart we have the 400 series. The two differences in them are the 400 series unit handles 129.6 CFM with about 90 PSI line pressure. The 200 series has the same insides, same filtration capabilities, but it's a 70 CFM unit. So typically, if we're looking for a filter that's only going to have to handle maybe 2 painters, we're going to go with the 200 series. Or if you've got a compressor, 15 horse or smaller, because a 15 horse screw, will produce about the 15 horse screw will produce about 4 CFM per horsepower. So you're looking at about a 60 CFM system. So this one will handle that fine. If you have bigger than that, larger than that 15 horse compressor, or you've got more than 2 painters in your shop, then we usually take a look at this 129 CFM filter. Many times in a shop, they may just put this filter in line and put regulators like this one at each point of use and just use one filter for the shop. So those are some options. But when we start talking about the details of filtration, it goes further than just a water trap. We hear a lot of different ways that people are using to dry their air. We have to make sure when we're painting today, whether we're using it for painting or we're using it for breathing air, that we have clean air, contaminant free. All the new high solids materials are low VOC. Many of these low VOC products don't have as much solvent in as we used to. You're mixing a clear coat at 2 to 1 or 3 to 1. Maybe we mix one at 3 to 1 plus 10% is about it for added solvent. So when you have that solvent in a product, it is a oil-based product that helps to mix with whatever contaminants, oil contamination you may have, and it can eliminate some of those problems. But when we eliminate that and we go to less solvent in there and we go to products like oxol and acetone, but very little of it to get the VOC levels down, now all of a sudden we're seeing those tiny molecules that the paint companies had to design to make these clear coats work with less solvent. They had to shrink those molecules, and when they did that, those molecules get any kind of contamination on them and they can fail. They can see fish eyes easier than we used to. You can see contamination more simple or more often than we used to. So we have to do a better job. And when we move into a waterborne arena, with waterborne, that old saying that oil and water don't mix becomes very evident right away when you're painting. So in the filtration systems, what we have, what SATA has done, is we have, in this case here, where we have a 3-stage filter, the air is going to go in on this end. On this filter, it's got a drain valve on the bottom, so an automatic drain valve, by the way. So if you have air to this, it will drain automatically when any moisture accumulates at the bottom. So over here, you can see it as well. Any moisture accumulates, it drains. That part's nice. So it isn't just a semi-auto drain like a lot of filters are. And those semi-auto ones either can be drained only when the air pressure gets below about 10 pounds, or if you manually open and drain them. And many of those filters even suggest leaving that valve cracked open so it's leaking all the time, which you're wasting air, you're causing your compressor to run harder, you're making more contaminants, because your compressor, the harder it works, the hotter it gets, the more heat it makes, the more contamination it presses in, the more oil you get in your lines, all of that increases. So having the auto drain valve is a big deal. But on this filter, in this first stage, we have a very simple solution for you. Number one, the filter, when you look inside this canister, This canister has a very clean coating inside, a very nice coating that stays contaminant free. Plus the auto drain built into the bottom of it allows that contaminants to be eliminated. The second thing is you'll notice, I'm going to remove this, there's a nut at the bottom of this filter that when I take that off, you can see this white water cyclone device. That water cyclone has an O-ring at the top of it, and inside it has a 5-micron sintered bronze cartridge. So what happens is the air rotates around the outside of this, and SATA put a nice large rotation to it so that it doesn't spin the air too quickly, causing it to blow through the filter media too fast. It keeps it at a constant rate, allows a high volume of air to turn and throw particles to the outside, drain to the bottom where it's drained. Now the air goes through the bottom of this. There's an O-ring on this nut, on this plastic knob that seats at the bottom of that cartridge. And there's an O-ring in the top of this white water cyclone that the sintered bronze element seats against.
Duke,
so when that's in there,
did you have
it
a good
allows
nap?
the air to blow through that cartridge. And on the outside of this cartridge, it collects all of the debris. It's a very large surface area compared to any of the other filters out there, so that it has a huge surface area to clean. Now, when we talk filter maintenance later, we're going to mention how to clean this. So this one doesn't necessarily need to be replaced, other than if you really have a dirty air system and this thing gets completely clogged and you start seeing your filtration capability, air volume dropping in your system, then we may replace this. But otherwise, we're just going to clean this thing once every 6 months. Pretty simple to clean. I guess we'll just do it now. Simple way is you can take something as simple as a small tray like this, put some clean thinner in it. You just use a nylon brush like this. You could use a toothbrush for that matter. Put it in the clean thinner, of course wearing gloves, and wash this thing off with clean thinner or acetone, and then you blow it dry with a blowgun. Blow it dry from the inside out and put it back into your system. So pretty simple solution. It goes together very easily. Again, the nut goes on the bottom, making sure that that O-ring is in place. There's an O-ring inside. So this water cyclone element just slides back in. Now, one thing that is I need to note, and I'm going to show you, is the filter that we have hanging on the wall. Or there's a couple different ways that you can drain the air from this. Now, this system, before you can take it apart, you have to kill the air. So we have an air valve, we can shut it off. You can either turn this valve to relieve that air pressure. You can open, we have an open valve here that I can open. Or at the bottom of this, these drain valves that are fully automatic, you can just lift it, press up on it, and that'll relieve all of the air pressure inside that filter. Now, once you've relieved that pressure inside that filter, it's important that you find this flat black wrench with these two bumps on it, because these were made, so when this thing is brand new, they're really tight on there. You can slide this up to the bottom of this filter and it catches these holes, and you can use that to turn that loose so that you can turn them by hand. And all three of those filters are like that. So that's one thing. So once you have that air drained, then we'll go to this point. Now we've cleaned this first stage. The second stage is where your fine filtration happens. Now this fine filtration is done by this blue cartridge that you see here. This blue cartridge is a fine filter. Now SATA chose this filter because of the capabilities of it. There's a large amount of filter capability inside of this, but when you open it up and look at it, you're going to notice that it doesn't look dirty on the outside. And that's because the air goes through this first stage and it goes to the inside of this cartridge and goes out through it. So all the debris is collected on the inside of it. So you may look at it and say, well, that looks clean. But if it really looks dirty, then your filter is really bad because it's saturated all the way through from the inside. There's a plastic knob on the bottom. And it has a pretty fine thread on it, so quite a bit of turning on that. And this comes off, so you can see how that now comes off of there. At the top of this cartridge, there's an O-ring. And there's an O-ring also on this knob. So there's a little O-ring at the base of this. So when you get a new cartridge, a new fine filter cartridge, and you can, when you open this up, you're going to see that the new cartridge comes with a couple things in here. Inside with the cartridge are a couple of O-rings. So those two O-rings I just showed you are here. The cartridge itself comes sealed in this plastic. So that cartridge, and we'll get these. On this cartridge, you want to make sure that you put on the larger O-ring. This goes on the end of the cartridge. The small O-ring then replaces the one that's on the little plastic knob. And that's ready to go back on. So you want to make sure, you always want to make sure when you get this cartridge that the one was still on there like it was here, so it didn't stay up inside the body of the filter. Because if it stays up in there now, the new cartridge won't seat. So that one did come off with the canister. Presses in, this just slips back on. Now this happens once every 6 months. So in a perfect scenario, the first stage should be cleaned every 6 months. The second stage, replace this cartridge once every 6 months. So that's the first two stages are ready to go. Now the third stage, this filter element that you see here is the carbon filter. Now, if you're spraying a solvent-borne shop, you may not need that stage. So you can run just with the first two. So the filter comes as a 2-stage, or like you see here as a 3-stage. However, in this case, because we want to use this not only for spraying waterborne, so we want the carbon to remove what's left over from droplets that we've taken out in the first stages. It becomes, what's left is a vapor form, and this carbon will remove what's in that vapor form. So we don't have any oil contaminants, anything like that getting through into your paint jobs. But it also is important if you're going to breathe the air, and we'll talk about breathing air in a little bit. You can wear just this little valve on your hip and just replace the charcoal at the wall. Now this charcoal filter comes off just like this one. It has O-rings just like that second stage. This one is replaced once every 3 months. Now with each of these canisters, cartridges, also comes a new filter timer. So when I look at, this one's for the activated charcoal. Slide that back on there. We have one here for the fine filter. You'll notice these filter timers. Now, with each one of these, you get a new filter timer holder. But once you have that on your filter, you don't need that. All you need inside is this small filter timer itself. And on your canister, you'll see this one on here was expired. So this one, we changed that second stage. This one has a 6-month timer on it. I'll just slip that out of there. And what's nice about that is the one I just slipped out. Underneath there is a part number for the new filter cartridge. So it's easy to remember. You just slide this back in and you press this button. And when you press that button, it snaps and it creates that timer to start working. And that red line will work its way back up to that filter as you go. So you do the same thing on each one. So you replace the filter timer as you clean the first stage. You can replace the third stage when you replace that carbon filter. And it's just simple. So that's basic maintenance of a filter. 6 months on the first 2 stages and a 3-month timer on the carbon, and you're good to go. Now, by doing that, we get a lot of questions. Hey, I don't use my airs often, maybe in my shop. We're at a Votech, or I don't paint every day in this. I'm a custom shop. You still need to change your filter cartridges, because when they sit and they have dull air or air that's not actively moving through it, you can grow bacteria, mold, etc., from just sitting. Once anything has gone through this filter and it saturates or gets on the carbon is an absorbent, and that carbon after 3 months stop absorbing like it should in this unit. So you need to replace them on time. So 6 months, 6 months, 3 months. So that's the SATA filtration. That's cleaning it. That's maintenance of it. I think it's safe to say that that's a pretty simple system to do, whether you're using a 200 series or the 400 series. Now, the biggest benefits with these filters, we're only using, we're giving you low amount of labor time to change these, but we're giving you a high degree of filter separation. This filter, when we go down to 0.01 microns, we're actually filtering that air 10 times finer than a majority of the filters that are out there that are only going down to 0.1 micron. So when we do that, we want to give you the absolute cleanest air, the highest amount of CFM, so that your spray guns work properly with the right CFM, but also so that your breathing air is high quality so that it's safe for you as a painter to breathe that air. So then when we move on to talking more about the breathing system, we're going to show you today with the new AirVision 5000. But what this thing has that's very, very nice is SATA listened very closely. We've had an older version, the 200 series or 2000 series, for a number of years. They came out with this a couple of years ago. They made the cape itself, the portion that covers the painter, on both our 2000 and on this 5000. What's nice about that is the enclosure for the mask closes in front of it, so it covers completely your neck areas, making sure you're not getting overspray on you. But when we went to the 5000, the benefit that SATA put in this was ease of removing this. The whole thing just comes off. So it's simple if you want to throw this in the washing machine and clean it. But what you'll also notice is on this, there's a bunch of vertical lines. Those vertical lines are actually carbon fiber sewn into that, which is an anti-static piece that allows paint to be repelled away from the painter instead of being drawn towards it. Where that saves you is you're not getting these as dirty, and you're also repelling paint away so it's not being drawn towards your tear-offs. The tear-offs also on the SATA hoods on either one are treated with an anti-static treatment so that they also help repel a little overspray. So you can use them for extended days in a shop. The hood itself has a coupler fitting. It has a gauge on it that has a green zone in it that you want to make sure you have enough air volume to give you positive pressure in your mask. And you have a couple of options. You can either use this belt unit, which is just an adjustment valve, and you connect your air fitting into that. And you have, this is where your hose would connect at the belt. So we have that option, and you can adjust if you want more or less air going into your hood for comfort reasons. So that's a nice benefit. But if you don't, and that's if you have a 3-stage unit on the wall, so you have carbon. If you don't have, if all you have is a 2-stage SATA filter with just the first stage, which is the auto drain valve, it has the centered bronze element and the fine filtration, then we need to have carbon to remove those leftover vapors, oils, odors, all that stuff we need. So this is what the carbon unit looks like. The nice thing is on this belt, it just slides on. Put it right side up, that'll be easier. So that just locks in. So now this is on there, and I can even adjust this. If I want my hose coming at a different angle or the hose from behind, I can adjust that on the belt. So I can have that at whichever angle I would like my hose connecting to this at. But the carbon replacement cartridge in this is pretty simple. So I'm gonna take this off of here. Just to show you. And this piece on the side that has the filter timer is the side that your carbon unit is in. So on this filter unit, you'll notice that lid comes off, and then you have to pry a little bit on the end. And there's a seal that needs to be broken. But this is what the sintered carbon unit looks like on the AirVision 5000. So with this, there is an O-ring that's on this lid, you have to be sure that when you put this back in, rotate it around till you find where it fits, and you just maybe heard that snap. It creates a little pop, and you can see that it's a tight seal all the way around, because if you only put it in partially and you don't get that seal where you can see that gap, when you go to put this cap on it, you plug it into air, it can blow air out of here or even blow this cap loose. So snap that in so that it's fully sealed on that O-ring. Make sure this doesn't cross thread. There you go. And screw the cap down tight, and you're good to go for another 3 months. It'll come with one of these filter timers. So you slide this one out. It'll give you the part number underneath it. If you don't know it, remember it. Slide the new timer in and press that button. So that's a pretty simple maintenance on this unit.
Tony, we got a question. You got time to take a question?
Yeah.
Okay. The question is, so is there no need for a desiccant filter?
No, absolutely not. The biggest reason we don't use desiccants, there's a few, number one, but the first reason we don't use it is because desiccant fractures. And when it fractures, it breaks down and it comes out into your spray gun, into your paint jobs as tiny little particulates that cause contamination issues. Many times you'll see that when you're looking across a clear coat job you just shot. All of a sudden you'll see these tiny little things that look like pinholes, or they'll look like solvent pop until you magnify them and you see this tiny little shiny speck in it that looks like dried clear or something, and most people will, oh, I must have left clear in my gun, or I didn't get it cleaned, or whatever. No, it's contamination, and you're blowing silica right into your paint job. And we all know what silica does. Silicone and paint, of course, are enemies. Plus, silica gel desiccant was listed now as part of Prop 65 as a known carcinogen, and they have to label that now. And so we have never used desiccant. The filter system that we use gives us typically around, worst case scenario, you see about 12% relative humidity, which is certainly suitable for spraying anything from water or solvent. So we have a good clean ability there. But the other thing is just having proper drops. So before you go into a filter, making sure that you don't just run a 90 into your filter, but you put a T there with a drip leg. And we have an auto drain valve on the bottom of that. But even if you just have a regular valve on it, use that. Do a proper couple of spots in your shop where you see a low spot in your piping. If there's a union anywhere near there, or if you can put one in there and put a drain valve right out of the bottom of that pipe, that helps a great deal so that you can drain that water before it gets to your filter system. But with this filtration system, it doesn't need that. We do, of course, recommend for paint shops to put in a refrigerant dryer. That can certainly help eliminate the need. But desiccant ends up causing more contamination issues. It can dry things very well when you first put it in, but when you saturate something after an 8-hour workday full of water, it can't absorb anymore. And now it just doesn't work anymore. And then you coat it with any kind of oil, desiccant doesn't work. And so there's really no reason to use it. It causes more contamination issues, and you can't breathe air that has desiccant in it. So hopefully that answered that question. A couple maintenance things that we have when we look at this hood. On it, obviously there's a tear-off shield on the front. There's 6 pins on this hood. On the old AirVision 2000, there were 6 pins, but those could actually turn, and sometimes they'd pull out. SATA fixed that on the 5000, so they can't pull out of there. So now you can put your new tear-offs on. They just slip onto those pins. Those of you that watched last week's episode, we accidentally slipped up and called Jim Kovatic a painter. This week, we show you what that white piece of tear-off cover is for. That's so when you look at his work, it eases the pain. You can't see what he painted. We didn't really mean to call him a painter last week, but it's there to protect you. It's in between every sheet in the pack. These come in 5 packs, 20 packs, 50 packs, 100 packs. You can even buy them up to 1,000 pack if you're in a setting that needs more. Inside, we have a headband assembly that's fully adjustable. But on the crown of this, you'll see this sweatband. Here's what they look like when they're new. So it's padded, it just wraps around the sweatband and it grips to itself. And now they've even added more recently a little tab so you can Velcro that on there so that it doesn't fall off when you take your hood on and off. So that's been a nice addition. And we also have these hygienic inserts. And these hygienic inserts have little slots in them that just line up in here with all these little pins. And I just replaced this one on this hood. They just clip onto all these little pins, and then there's 2 spots down inside the hood that you just clip that on. And by doing that, it gives you a clean surface against your face. So that's up to you. If you had a week where you sweat a lot more and got this thing dirtier, you can change it sooner. If you don't mind that, I guess you can wear that as long as you'd like. The sweatbands themselves are replaceable. They come in a 20-pack. But you can buy, or these things are nice because you can also get these, you can wash them. So if you decided you just want to clean this up, wash it in the sink with some water and soap and hang it up on the sink and put it back on the next day. Also, what I want to show you is where these go against your head, there's a small foil tab on here. Leave that in place. That foil tab is there so it touches your skin, and it actually is another grounding point to keep static away from your hood. And all of the components in this are all static or anti-static treated, from the plastic inside the headband to everything about this. So now you have a very comfortable hood that you can see a great deal with. Field of vision on this is up to 260 degrees. So you have a great field of vision. They're very quiet. This is even more quiet than the old gray 2000 unit. By placing a different air direction device down inside the chin, the foils that are in there that create the air to sheet up across your face in a different manner, gives you better air across your face, but it also is quieter. And these things only use from as low as 6 CFM up. You can crank them up and use up to 15, but most people don't want that at maximum going into their belt unit and maximum going across your face. So we see it being run somewhere closer in that 6 to 8 range. So it's a very low CFM unit. Again, with the industrial valve, you don't need any maintenance on this. So it might be better for you to consider going to that 3-stage filter, put the carbon on the wall, especially if you've got more than 2 painters. It just makes it simple. You don't have to change 2 or more carbon units inside of this each month or every 3 months. It just makes it simpler to do the maintenance at the wall and change it 1 filter for everybody. So those are the basic maintenance pieces on the hood. And on the filtration, we have distinct advantages with the filtration, but you need to take care to do the maintenance. Put them on a schedule, just do it. Whether you put that in your calendar on your phone, however you want to do that. The filter timers help a great deal. Use them and click the button on it and start that timer. When it's red all the way to the top, change your filters. You want clean paint work. You don't want redos. You want enough air volume to paint the cars without loss of pressure and without changing your color. You want enough air volume so that you're not losing film build going across the panel. You're not losing pressure going across the panel, changing the look of your clear. This filter helps you to do that. And then just keep yourself covered up, keep yourself safe. And I'll see if there's any other questions.
Yeah, so we got a few coming in. I guess before we get to some of these, I kind of wanted to really talk about, shop owners if you're out there, and then us old painters who seem to think we're invincible. But it really, really is a good time for you to be thinking about the air quality that your painter is breathing, and why fresh air is so important. I mean, our respiratory functions are huge, especially right now, and products and paint has changed. So walking in the paint booth in a t-shirt with a half mask is a recipe for death almost. So some things to think about. Tony, one of the questions, which will be perfect for you, is with that system, is the person required to shave their face?
No, that's the other great thing. Having that hygienic insert on the inside of that hood. This hood is, so is the Vision 2000, by the way. Both of them are in what's called the NASH approved category for loose fitting supplied air hoods. It's not a face mask. It's not a tight fitting mask. It's a loose fitting hood. So when you put that hood on, it goes under your chin and it's loose fitting. It's positive pressure. So it's a loose fitting, positive air supplied air hood. And what's great about that is it continually pushes the paint away from the mask. It doesn't draw it in. And no, so if you've got a beard, this is great for that. So
Right.
you do not need fit testing. One size fits. So it's, yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for asking.
Even Ron Cohen can wear this hood.
Yeah, and Ron Cohen has become, you don't see him painting without a shirt on in the booth anymore like he did on TV. That
Yeah.
was but no, these, they work great for that.
And then there's a question about a whip hose, Tony, for using a whip hose on the filtration unit.
So I got to do the politically correct part here.
You have to give the legal answer.
Yeah, legal answer. The USA and Canada are the only two places on earth that can't use a whip hose legally, according to NIOSH. So we need to run two hoses. The hoses that we run are important also because the hoses that we run are a non-gassing hose. They're non-wicking. They don't let moisture into them. They don't let contaminants inside, all of that. So they're odor-free. That's a very important part. And honestly, what's great about it is these same hoses can be used for painting because they don't allow contaminants and moisture and things from the floor. Overspray, if you wet a boot floor down in a solvent shop, all that stuff, these hoses don't allow anything inside of it. So they're approved for the breathing industry and the food industry. But when we get talking about a whip hose, in Germany and the rest of the world, they can run a whip hose. And on both of these belt units, there's a plug that is on here. Now, the hard thing is the rules state two hoses. Whether you're using carbon or no carbon, they state two hoses. If you're going to remove that, and it's up to you, that's your choice. We are telling you it's not NIOSH approved. Should you take that out, make sure you put a coupler in there, a threaded coupler. Of course, I don't have one right near me, but a threaded coupler from SATA, because we use straight threads. And if you try to shove a tapered thread coupler in that, it'll split the case by the time you get it tight, break it, and that's on you. Then you plug a high flow fitting onto that with a whip hose to your spray gun. That's up to you if you're gonna choose that route. Now, the hard thing is the rules state clearly, the whip hose, you gotta run two hoses, one for the gun, one for the mask. We've had that discussion a lot of why is that? And the biggest reason is they are afraid at NIOSH that you could get paint fumes somehow backwards against your, if you have a hose with a whip hose, you're going to somehow get paint fumes to go from your gun backwards through a hose that's pushing against them and get into that. So obviously that can't happen, but they allow us to put the manifold at the wall. So we can run a dual regulator here. I just can't run it at my hip. And so it doesn't make sense, but it's one of those things sometimes you learn to not argue, because eventually if we argue hard enough, they could make us have two separate air sources, which would mean two separate compressors, two separate everything. So sometimes you gotta learn to shut up, just don't say anything. But the real answer is just wearing the two hoses is really not that big of an inconvenience. They're not that heavy. It hooks in behind you, pull it behind you as the painter and have your other hose for your spray gun. It really is not that inconvenient. We've been doing it that way for a lot of years. The rule changed to two hoses in April of 2004. So we've managed for 16 years to get by doing that. I think we'll live another century without it. But for right now, the answer is we can't. I can't show it that way. What you do, we have hoses. It's your choice.
Excellent. If there's any questions anybody wants to unmute themselves and ask, you can go ahead and feel free. Definitely an important topic. I don't think we think about.
Well, I think having the hose system, because we get asked a lot, wow, when are you guys going to come out with a PAPR? I think the right answer is we're not.
Yeah.
Because we want to breathe uncontaminated air from outside the spray booth. And those that feel they can take a unit that, can you look on anyone's website if they have a unhosed system at all? You go to those companies' websites and type in, can I use charcoal for breathing isocyanates? And they all say absolutely no. So it seems silly to me that you hook it up to a belt unit that looks like a motorcycle battery and a leaf blower motor and blow that through charcoal and then it's okay. So it is not possible to do that, get good clean air all the time. You want to know what you're breathing. And by pulling it through supplied air from outside the paint booth, at least we know what we're breathing. It does require you have either one of these, which is a CO monitor. CO monitors, there's two options. There's one for large shop, which it has a quick connect that just is a compression fitting that attaches, and we can run that line to the end of the manifold on your filter. Runs up through a sampling line and gives you alerts on this one, which is an electric piece that has to be plugged in. This will give you 10 parts per million readout, an audible alarm. We can hook up air horns to it. We can hook up extra loud buzzers, anything you need. Or we have that in a miniature version, which is more common lately. This little ICOM device comes with a couple different ways. It has a clip that glues to the back with double-sided tape, and that hooks up inside your hood, or it comes with Velcro that you can stick to the back and stick it to the inside of your hood. You turn it on, so simply holding the button. It turns on, it'll go through a series of alerts, and then it'll give you a display reading. This one works for a year, and then you need to have it calibrated. So inside that kit, and this gives you audible readout, and it gives you a visible readout. It'll tell you how many parts per million carbon dioxide you've breathed over the last 8-hour shift. It'll give you all kinds of information. But in this box with this, you'll find instructions, specifications, but on the backside, you'll find a place to fill it out, and you fill this out, and you mail this thing to us or ship it to us UPS once a year. It costs you, I think it's like $49. Yeah, about 49 bucks. You send that in once a year, we calibrate it, and we change the battery in it, and so it's good for another year. And so a very inexpensive way to meet the regulations and keep yourself safe, knowing that you have no carbon dioxide coming through your line. Now, the carbon dioxide issue is one that's a big one. We get a lot of questions about. Your compressor doesn't make carbon dioxide unless it's on fire. So most of them aren't. But this also, the electrochemical sensor in either one of these is nice because it doesn't just measure for carbon dioxide. It also measures for hydrocarbons. So if you do have a high oil content blowing through, it'll pick that up. If you've got paint fumes, because your exhaust for your paint booth blows outside, and if your compressor intake is somewhere where the wind blows paint fumes and it picks it up, your CO monitor lets you know. So really nice pieces to have. We've got a couple different versions, but very important that you use a carbon dioxide monitor when you're breathing compressed air.
I hadn't thought of that, Tony, about exhaust, and so many shops with their compressors are outside,
Right.
with just a little hood over them, little rooftop. But yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so if your paint, maybe your exhaust for your paint booth and your compressor intake are on a different side of the building, but if you've got paint fumes blowing out of a stack on the top, blowing down, it could pick that up and alert you. The other thing it alerts you for is if you have your air compressor in a room a lot of times they're in a utility room. And if they don't have that vented well, or a vent pipe going to their compressor, it could be picking up whatever CO is being given off by your hot water heater. We'll have compressors that are mezzanine in a service. Let's say your shop has both service and collision. I've been in shops where they had, you're in the winter and they have the doors shut, and they're not necessarily running always the exhaust tubes going to the outside of the building, and all their compressors sits in an area where it can pick up exhaust fumes. This will alert you for that CO. It'll alert you if you're trying to weld something. If you have your compressor sitting in the same corner where a body meter welding on things, it'll pick up the CO. So those are things to take a look at. I mean, your compressor shouldn't be in those areas, but it happens. At least then you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Jason, you got any questions?
Might explain why the painter takes a nap every day about 2 o'clock.
Right. That's just painter.
Hey Tony, with the 3-stage system, what will the humidity get down to?
It really depends a lot on plumbing, how you plumbed it. If you've got your compressor and you've got a pipe coming out of your compressor with no refrigerator dryer aimed straight downhill towards your paint booth, and you're putting your filter near your paint booth, typically you're not going to see it getting over about 12%. If you've got it run properly, it can be much lower than that. Now that could depend on how much you ran that compressor today. A shop that's cranking, shops that are turning 200-hour weeks, that compressor runs a lot more than it does at a shop turning 50. And that's kind of a variable, but typically we're seeing it normal day-to-day use. We have a Kaiser screw here, and we have a refrigerant dryer on that. And if we run it we got plumbing so we can bypass the refrigerant dryer. If we run that, it'll run 12%. However, outside of our paint booth, we put in a 400-gallon storage tank. Wouldn't have to be that big, but we did because we run a lot of breathing masks and stuff. And when we do a class, we might have 6-8 people in that booth. So having a tank there with an auto drain in the bottom cuts that significantly. So then we're only seeing 6-7 percent humidity. So it definitely makes a difference on how you plumb things. But having just a secondary storage tank somewhere with an auto drain valve in it, and your air piping goes into the side and out of the top, back up to your airlines, man, that really helps eliminate a lot of stuff. And you don't have to be 400. You can put in a 100-gallon tank or a 200-gallon tank. You can buy just the tanks from most of the compressor companies, or you can take a compressor that maybe the compressor part of it failed, and use that just as a storage tank when you put your new compressor in. But all that stuff helps to eliminate issues that are much cheaper than replacing a compressor sometimes.
Well,
Tony, this is Frank. How you doing?
Hey, good. How are you?
Quick question. Good. Quick question on that whip hose. Could SATA develop one hose with 2 hoses in it? That's lightweight, D grade.
I think the hard part, that's a great question. We get that question a lot, and we just went through a whole series of looking at that. The hard part is when you change just the hose. Let's just say we go to that. Now you have to go apply for a completely new NIOSH approval for every length of hose that you can possibly make. So now you have to create a new NIOSH approval for a 10-foot hose, a 15, a 25, a 35, a 50, 60, 75, and 100 all over again, and go through a 2.5-year process that could be $100,000. So yeah, we have taken a look at that. We have them for like industrial, where you have a hose that maybe has an air hose and a fluid hose, but they're not in one covering. The other issue is they're concerned with, for whatever reason, and I can see it, but static. When you have 2 hoses side by side into a paint booth, having some static are the other issues that NIOSH would balk at. So yes, we have really taken a hard look at that, but you still need the diameter. You still need the 3/8 hose or 9mm hose inside dimension for both the breathing and for the painting air. And now you do that, it gets a little bulky and they get less flexible.
Yeah.
So those are
bulky either way. Yeah.
Questions, but we have tried to take a look at that and see what we can do to change that. And for right now, it's not an option. So sorry. Good question.
Cool. Thank you.
all right. Well, definitely an important topic, and I'm glad that we're covered it. I think as I travel around in audit shops, painters are historically the least protected out there, it seems. And so they have a way of not of thinking that half mask and a lot of that stuff's going to keep them protected. So definitely want to get that.
Well, I think we talked a little bit earlier about what today some of the chemicals that we're using, and when we start spraying with oxol and acetone and things and lowering the VOCs, keep in mind to get that paint to come out of a gun, when you take thinner out of it like what they did, now the paint companies had to come up with a way to make the molecular structure of those paint particles so much smaller. And I like to use, see if I can reach it here. Here, I'll use this one. Let's say this cup. If you filled this with, remember the old red Super Balls? If you filled that with Super Balls, wherever those things touched in the old days, let's say back 15, 20 years ago with the paint that we had, everywhere that those molecules, and let's say those Super Balls are the molecules of paint, wherever they touched, you had a chemical cross-link, and that's where you got your adhesion together of those molecules, your durability, all of that. But where all those gaps were in between was filled with solvent. So it was great because you could damn near paint a forklift that wasn't cleaned that well and not have fish eyes because you had so much solvent in there washing the debris away. When they lowered the VOC limits, now that molecular structure is like filling this with BBs. So now you'll feel it's heavier, the content, because the solids content became much higher. But if they didn't shrink that molecular structure, it wouldn't come out of a paint gun. It'd be like trying to spray cottage cheese. So they had to shrink the molecular structure to make that more fluid, lower the viscosity to get that so it would come out of a gun. Well, now what happened is now those molecular structure are so much smaller that guess what? They absorb through your skin faster. They get on your eyes and on your hair and on your face and on your hands and everything, and they absorb easier because they're smaller. Now you mix that with water, which we're made up of, and now it goes through your skin even way faster than it used to. So if you're shooting water or any kind of clears that are VOC compliant or any clears in particular, it's not like the old days, because even the clears that they're calling compliant are low VOC, but you've been able to add enough of those solvents like oxol and acetone to bring the viscosity down. So it's still in there and it's still a small molecular structure and it's still going to cause a lot more grief than it used to for a painter. Health risks are higher. So keep yourself covered up. We have paint suits. You can get gloves. Most times of the year you can get gloves. This has been a little crazy. I just tried to order more today and gotta wait. So Frank, if you have any gloves, or Kason, if you got any gloves, our warehouse staff would love you. Let me know. But we are at a point where we have to cover up better. We just have to. We got to be smarter than what we've been, and that is showing. The results are showing. We can see it in replacement cartridges. We see it in mass, the full hood sales. But to have a charcoal mask doesn't do the job, and to have a half mask air supplied, the only time we really try to sell that is if we have somebody that that welds a lot, and you're in a welding shop, and you have already a nice mask that auto shades when you put it up and down and all that, and you like that mask, then just wear a half mask underneath it with air supplied to it so that you aren't breathing welding gases. So that's the only, I would say, place I would use
for that.
Air supplied half mask.
I think it's just people forget how much. I think we've always thought as painters it was about what we were breathing in, and then walking in there with that half mask, my eyeballs, my face, my hair, just so much exposed that's just piling the chemicals onto my body. And it's a slow build. So you don't know how bad you feel till it's too late almost. And then we've had people switch to fresh air, and painters are like, I feel like so much better at the end of the day. I have so much more energy. They didn't know how much it was affecting them. So
well, you don't taste that when you go home. And there's a good trick if you want to do it sometime. When you're barefoot sometime, step on a flip-flop or on a sandal or whatever, pour garlic powder on that and stand on it. It takes about 6-8 minutes. You can taste that. And it's because it gets into your bloodstream and it spreads through. And what we have to remember, if we're getting coated by those contaminants and they're getting through into our bloodstream, now it's not just affecting your pulmonary system like we thought in years past. It's now going through your whole pulmonary system. It's going through your whole nervous system. It's going through everything in your body. And I always use the example that now it's going through everything. And now my liver has to filter that blood. And I do enough damage to my liver on a weekly basis. I put it through its paces enough. I don't need to do that with paint too, but it is truth. Just keep yourself covered. We can live a long, successful life in this paint industry. And when we get back to painting a lot of cars again, we can make a very good living.
Yeah.
And we have to make sure we take care of ourselves. There's a lot at risk.
It is a good time I know a lot of shops are cleaning and painting and doing things. And so it's a good time to be thinking about your air, how you're supplying your painters, filters, and SATA, you're open, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we're open. We're just to be clear, we're Dan M Company. So we're the I guess the official title is Dan M Company, the exclusive independent importer distributor of SATA for the United States and Puerto Rico. So we're open. SATA Germany has done an exceptional job. If you listened last week, I talked about it, and we actually had one of our sales directors from Germany get on the phone or get on the call with us, and we talked about what they're doing to stay in business, and it's pretty exceptional what they're doing over there. They did take a little bit of a longer Easter break. Normally they have last Friday as Good Friday off, and they have this Monday off and stuff, but they decided to give their factory workers who have been going through a lot over there with this COVID deal, they gave them all this week off. Now, in advance of that, they made sure we had everything we needed. And we have containers coming in. Today, we emptied a couple containers of both RPS and product. Of course, it made it a little more difficult to get air freight. We usually get 14 to 36 big P2 pallets every 2 weeks. And pallet pricing went from what used to cost about $600 a pallet to about $2,700 a pallet to air freight those, because they don't have as many passenger planes that they could throw them in. And so now we're down to air cargo only. And so we have, luckily, in advance of this, we always have backup plans, and we started putting half containers full of RPS going by sea and the other half filling with pallets of product. So this morning we received 17 pallets of, I should have brought one in here. We got a new promotion right now. If you buy an X gun, you get it's a super nice, what they call a weekender bag, nice leather duffel. That's pretty cool, but they're bulky. And so we had 17 pallets of bags that came in today. So those are here now. They just arrived today. So we just started shipping to all of our distributors that place the orders in advance. So we have those in stock. So if you're looking for a spray gun, buy an X gun and tell them you want your,
Get a bag. Yeah.
need your bag so that you can go somewhere eventually when this ends.
Well, you could come to Spring Valley, Minnesota, and take a tour.
Yeah, we'd love to show you around. But we're in business. We're doing everything we can to keep 100% of our staff. SATA Germany did the same thing. I mean, they literally, it was pretty bad where they were at. You know, they're in Stuttgart, and that area of the world got hit pretty hard with it earlier. And so they split their teams into 2 shifts, where the first half starts earlier and works a half a day. And they have an hour gap in between, and nobody in the same department can work next to each other. So some of the machines that they used to have 2 people working in a similar, let's say, same area, they split them. So one works the first half of the day, then they have to, obviously they have hand cleaning, and they have all the, you know, whatever they can to just sanitize, but they sanitize again in between shifts. So the second shift comes in, doesn't have a chance to they can't even see the first people, and they're checking their temperatures in and out of the building. So they really stepped up early and did that, and they worked with their suppliers to help do the same thing and protect their people. And so we've got inventory in some items now that could last 6 months, you know, but luckily we've been receiving shipments. So
it's just a great, I mean, it's from the team in Germany, it feels like a family ran company, family business when you're over there. And then
it is a family business.
Yeah.
It's a family-owned company.
Canute and Bridget do a good job in Spring Valley, and it's just family, family, family all the way. So if you're cleaning your booths, if you're, you know, resurfacing them, painting them, putting down new pig mat, whatever you're doing, stop and think about your air, and then make sure you give SATA a call. Jason and Tony and Kavadik and Springer, everybody would love to talk to you about your air and keeping yourself safe, so you can reach out to them.
Brad Gravenoff. And so last week we did a little bit of a quickie on how to get to our info channel and get to our YouTube channel. I think if we could do that again for those that weren't on last week. But if you go to YouTube, open up YouTube and you just type in SATA by Dan Am, it pulls up a whole channel. And at in that search bar where you typed in SATA by Dan Am, you can put space and then just type filters. And there's 2 really good videos that pop right up. One of them was actually, so if you go in that search bar where it says SATA by Dan Am Company, then just type filters. It'll pull up. The first one that you see there, I believe, is the one that we did, and it actually shows us installing filtration and the Dan Am Air aluminum piping system in Kristen's facility. So that one's a cool video. It's a short tour through, it shows that. The second one is, no, the third one down actually is one that you have to forgive us for the music soundtrack that they picked in Germany, but apparently it sounds a little bit like a German version of Pornhub when you turn that video on. But it is a cool video showing exactly what we just talked about how the air gets cleaned through that filter, and it shows the air walking all the way through that. So great video. It'll show you each piece. It shows a cutaway. It's going to show all the contaminants that go in and explains what contaminants those are. It goes through every single stage. So if you get a chance, watch that video. I'll just warn you now, turn your volume down before you turn that on.
Yeah, I muted that. Hey, Kaysen wrote a little note there, said he's got some gloves for you, Tony. So I think Kaysen's going to hook you guys up.
Yeah, let me know. Yeah, we'll take them. So I know we need them in a medium and an XL.
Excellent.
Preferably microflex if you have microflex, but at this point we can't be so fussy.
Yeah, not so.
Just let me know how we gotta do a PO.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's gonna be that's gonna be the end of our day today for webinars, and then we got the SATA guys back again. And I should have had the schedule pulled up. Jason, are you prepared to cover my tail for not being prepared?
Of course I am. Of course I am. Yeah. So tomorrow 1 o'clock, we've got 3M coming in talking about repair solutions for HD trucks. So that should be pretty interesting. I know there's a lot of people ask questions about that. And then tomorrow afternoon, a little bit later, we've got Mitchell coming in at 5 o'clock Central Time, talking about cloud-based estimating systems.
Do you know when we're on again next week? What our day is?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to scroll through here and look.
Next Friday, Fresh Air Solutions in Care, 11 a.m. Central
Well, we
Time.
just did that one, so we're gonna figure out a different topic next week. We'll surprise everyone.
Yeah.
You know what? Let's talk about piping next week. Let's talk about Dynam Air.
Ooh, I like it.
That'll be great.
Yeah,
Perfect.
that's what I've got in my shop. So I can even be standing out in front of my pipes if I need to. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining, and we will see you all. Okay.
When will you post? Tomorrow, probably. You guys will post this somewhere on your site so they can watch this again if they wanted.
Yep. Tonight it'll go up to YouTube. Yep. So it'll be there in about 2 hours.
All right. Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a fantastic day, and we will see you all tomorrow.